Good evening and welcome to this evening's edition of the Cardinal Way for Men Live. My name is Ed Cardinal, and tonight's topic is homophobia. If you listened or watched to my podcast about men and friendship, you heard my good friend and clinical social worker Ron Arsenal discuss one of the main reasons he feels in our country that men have difficulty having close friendships or close relationships with other men has to do with homophobia. And I looked up the definition of homophobia, and literally what it means is the dislike of or prejudice against gay people. There's also another definition or another direction I want to go with homophobia, and it's something that I had to work on in my own life, and it has to do with, and Ron talked about it, with men and having friendships with other men and the fear around that. So if you look at homo, which is men or man, and phobia, fear of men. So homophobia is a fear of heterosexual men to form close, intimate relationships with other men for fear of being perceived as gay. And I came across this from professor and sociologist Mike Kimmel, and he stated, "The great secret about American manhood is that we are afraid of other men." What he means by this statement is that men tend to be afraid of being judged by other men, specifically when it comes to their masculinity. Men will do anything to avoid being seen as feminine or gay. Gay men are stereotypically seen as feminine. More than 30 years ago, when I began to do my own personal development work, one of the things I had to take a look at was my homophobia. I was growing up as a very emotional, sensitive boy, and I was ridiculed because of that. And I grew up thinking that there was something wrong with me. And I know there's a lot of other men out there who can identify that, because those traits of being emotional, expressing feelings, being sensitive is seen as feminine and seen as gay. So when I began to take a look at myself and do some work on myself, I had to take a look at that fear that I had. And one of the ways that I did that is I joined a men's group. So that allowed me to, because I didn't have a close connection with my father, I didn't have positive role models about what it meant to be a man, particularly the type of man I was, who wasn't and didn't want to be afraid of expressing emotions, didn't want to be afraid of crying. I used to apologize when I did cry, but I don't anymore. I see that ability to express emotions and to cry as a man as more of a strength that takes courage. And unfortunately, one of the things that happens to boys as they get older into adolescence and men is because of this stigma about expressing emotions, men have a tendency to repress their feelings and emotions. And as I've talked about in the past, that creates a whole host of physical and mental health and social challenges, relationship challenges. So how does this topic of homophobia affect men and boys in relationships? Well, if you look at boys as they're growing up, they have no problems with hugging, holding hands with their male friends, with their friends in school. But something changes when they hit adolescence. There becomes more shame. It's more of a taboo. They become uncomfortable with platonic touch with their same-sex friends, and a lot of that has to do with what I talked about. It's seen as a feminine trait, it's seen as being gay. I want to read something else that I came across regarding that, and this is from Mark Green, who's the editor of the Good Men Project. He said, by the time boys, they are approaching puberty, many boys have learned to touch only in aggressive ways through roughhousing or team sports. So you take this forward, starting in adolescence, then into manhood, that trend continues with that fear about having that close, intimate relationships with other men. And I can tell you firsthand, this is not the way it is in all cultures. I've traveled to Southeast Asia. I've been around men from other countries, Spain, Greece, South America, Germany, and what I witnessed was no homophobia, no fear around touch men with other men. I noticed and witnessed in Thailand young boys holding hands, school-age boys, and then those same boys, as they got older, I saw those boys as men doing the same thing, walking down the street, down the sidewalk, hand in hand, arm in arm. And I have to tell you that my own prejudice came up when I saw that. I said to myself, in my own mind, they must be gay. But that's not the case. That would be something that I was conditioned to think through my upbringing and through being raised in this culture where homophobia is so prevalent. So what did I do about it? Well, with any fear, I think it's important that you challenge it. And the way I challenged it was, like I said, I joined a men's group where I learned how to have a strong, close, intimate relationships with other men. In fact, that's where I met my good friend Ron, where I could share my feelings and emotions without ridicule, without being judged. And I learned that the way I am, there's nothing wrong with it. And the other thing that I did was I began to not care what other people were thinking about me or think about me. People have thought I was gay, and it won't be the last time that people think I'm gay, and I don't care about that. I have to be myself as a straight man, regardless of what people think. I'm comfortable with expressing my feelings and emotions. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this topic up, because I know I'm not the only man who has struggled with this and has these same feelings. And hopefully, if you do, you take a look at it and do some work around it so it frees up yourself to have close, intimate relationships with other men. Also, to be able to not repress your feelings and emotions anymore. It's much healthier for you on all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I hope this was helpful. If it was, please drop a heart below. And until you see me again, be well. Take care. Bye-bye.